Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast, where we answer your sales distress calls. I'm your host, Liz Hyman, bringing the rescue boat to your sales challenges. In this ever-changing sales environment, it's easy for leaders to feel adrift. We're here to be the beacon guiding you to success. Each episode, I'm joined by top sales experts and practitioners who have navigated this waters and come out victorious. Together, we'll uncover the insights and strategies that will help you hit your sales targets and grow your business. So if you're ready to turn your sales distress into sales success, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Hi, I'm Liz Hyman, and this is the Sales SOS podcast. And in this episode, in this mini-series, we're talking about strategy and planning for the new year. In this episode, we're going to focus on understanding or using the past and understanding the past to plan for the future. I think it's really important, and I think it's a very hard thing for a lot of people to do effectively. So let me introduce the crew. We have Chris Bowen, Mike Simmons, and Renee Bigelow. And we are going to walk you through this understanding the past. So let me kind of start and explain a little bit more about what I mean. Very often, our strategy looks something like, and I said this in the last episode, we're going to increase sales 10%. Ready, set, go. Everybody go increase sales 10%. But what we don't do is figure out, how did we get where we got to last year, right? Who bought what? Who were our largest clients? What did they buy? What could they have bought that they didn't buy? Which industries were the easiest to sell to? Which industries were the hardest to sell to? What kinds of criteria make somebody not an ideal customer? What makes somebody a great ideal customer? Which customers could be buying more things? Like, what happened? What happened last year? Because that is the foundation of going, if that's what happened last year, and I have some ideas about this year, now I can build a plan. So that's what I want to talk about. I don't know. I'm kind of throwing this topic out at them without much prep. But Mike, what do you think about that? What am I missing? Why is it important?
I don't think you're missing really anything there. I mean, we have to reflect. If you take some time to reflect and look through the rearview mirror, or look in the mirror and look at the data that we have, we could get an understanding of what has been our reality and has led us to where we are. I forget the specific quote, but I'll find it while we're going through this. But there's your business is operating at the level that it is designed to do so. So if it is not operating where you want it, you've failed at design. It is performing in the way that it has been designed. So let's look at our data, whatever that data is. And if you don't have key performance indicators or metrics that you're looking at, then get some of those in place so that you know what you should be looking at. But I think you nailed it. I think this is where we reflect on what's important to us and then start to figure out of those things, what do we want to adjust and how do we want to adjust? And to the point that you made in the last episode, what needs to be true so that we achieve whatever the thing is in front of us.
Chris, go ahead.
No, I think I think one of the things you look at is, where was it that we wasted effort, time, and resources on things that we were either not likely to win or were absolutely had less than zero chance of winning. And was there a rationale for why we chased it, right? And sometimes you may chase things because, hey, I want to get my name known to that account in the future. We're not expecting to win this and things like that. But there's other times when you're chasing things because your salespeople got happy ears and heard something that confirmed something, but didn't necessarily dig in deep enough. And next thing you know, you're spending a lot of resources on something that wasn't even really yours to win, right? You weren't really going to be competitive. So being able to understand where you fell down on those bigger efforts. Small efforts are going to happen here and there, but if you spend a massive amount of resources in certain areas, you need to be able to figure out what should we do differently.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons, and I think this is part of thinking about what are we going to do differently next year. One of the reasons that we put a lot of resource into um, deals or opportunities that we're not going to win is because we have nothing else in the funnel. And if we can identify that we're doing that, then again, how do we strategize around not doing that next year?
Yeah. How much of that effort that you put towards that thing that you weren't going to win could have been put into prospecting, right? to the people that you actually should be selling to.
Yeah. Renee, what are your thoughts?
So I have a little bit different perspective to add another thought in with this. And that is often, almost every year, every business I touch and that I've ever worked in has a new initiative, right? And there is a ton of effort that goes into that new initiative. And in the beginning, those things are hard. They're messy. There's a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of testing. There's a lot, right? And one of the biggest opportunities in that like applied strategy level that we were talking about in our last episode is to really look at what we did and take a lot of those learnings from what we did and refine that with some processes and systems, right, to make it easier and better. So, for instance, I have a client who's going to be launching with a CRM for the first time, like a real CRM. They've had it sort of in their service platform and things like that. It's going to hurt, right? Like we all know this. Whenever you launch a new technology, it's going to change the processes of how people work. You're going to think you need to do it one way. It turns out you got to do something different, right? That takes a little breathing room to figure out. I think in planning, one of the biggest opportunities is to really look at where those improvements can be made and say to people, we heard your complaints. We understand. Tell us again, like where you're wasting time, where you're whatever. Like it's not all about efficiency, but there are efficiency gains with the processes and systems. Those efficiency gains are, and again, I'm using some consultancy speak, but we're in planning and strategy, and that's where people bring in people to help, right, for these things. You're looking to build capacity to do the next new thing. So you have to make those refinements. And that's how you open up the space, right, and have time to do it. But to me, the fun part, like the really fun part is it's like having a jigsaw puzzle in front of you and organizing all the pieces and building out the frame and, working with the color, all these colors go over here or whatever. You start getting them to work together so that it comes into one thing. So if you did something last year that was a big initiative, how do you build on it? Or how does it help with the new initiative? So that you get like a 1 + 1 = 3. There is too much work in marketing right now for me to consider doing anything that's a one-off unless we have to do something new and we're going to build on it later, right? There's almost always something we did last time that can help assist getting it going, or that like we can cross into. It always needs to be a twofer. And that's where that like applied strategy helps you figure out like how do we elevate this to help this get off the ground, like that kind of work. So I hope that's another perspective to kind of add to it.
I think though it's important because when we start talking about new initiatives, so we tie it into this larger thing. We're going to do more of what we did last year, and we're going to add this new initiative. And again, where's the stop investment? You can't take the same number of resources, the same number of hours in a day, the same tools, and now say we're going to do more with what we have and we're going to do it well. It may be once the technology is in place, you'll be able to do more with what you have, but in the process. So how are you planning for that? How are you planning to bring that new initiative based upon what you were able to accomplish last year? How are you going to add a new initiative into this year and still accomplish what you did last year? I think that's a really important context for this.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I just had this conversation. We're all talking about these things right now, right? Like in our conversations, and I had this conversation yesterday, and I could see someone's like a marketing director. I could see their head just start to explode, like thinking like, how are we going to do all this? And I was like, no. Like they build, like it's incremental and it builds, and when we get this one done, it becomes a part of the next thing, and like kind of explaining how those things work together. And then those things together take this other work off of us and give us something we never had. And, like it just feels, it can feel very overwhelming if you don't have them, these initiatives don't somehow overlap, or you get some systems that make it easier.
I think it's also if you get into where you're only discussing the initiative at the 30,000 foot strategic level, and you're not really breaking it down into what are the actions at the different roles that have to be engaged in it. What is it that we need each of these teams to be able to do? Then I think it's easy to become overwhelmed. I think if you can break it down into where that responsibility, where those communications need to occur between those teams, then you start to make it a lot easier, because they're like, oh, I can do that. But if you wanted me to do this whole thing, I don't even know where to start, right? Because it's too overwhelming relative to their day-to-day.
Yeah, it's exactly how the conversation went yesterday, Chris. It was a marketing team that's going to start lead gen type campaigns for the first time. And it just was, and so I'm talking about multiple lead gen campaigns, and then you build out a nurture series, and that establishes a whole customer journey. Essentially, their customer journey starts with people raising their hand to sell to them, right? And so we're going to back that up and get people to even move into consideration. And that just feels like this huge lift. I'm like, no, you've already, like, and then when we broke it down, I'm like, you've already done all this. What you haven't done is just piece it all together, right? So it became a little less like the head was about to explode, in a good way.
Especially for the people that are, for lack of a better term, more hands-on keyboard, the doers, it can become really, really overwhelming, because they're like, that's not what I do. I don't know how to do that, anything like, but you break it down and it starts to become more realistic, more tangible.
Like the thing that made the biggest difference is I said, no, you don't understand. For this kind of thing, we need good content. What you're really good at is good content. You just haven't tried to capture a lead earlier, right? So you're going to do the content. I'm going to walk you through how we're going to do capture the lead and nurture them and whatever. And and once you do it, it takes 50% less time to do it the second time.
Are they also prepared for the fact that they're gonna end up seeing, when they bring this in, they're going to end up seeing very likely lower win rates, right? Because now you're not just taking inbound leads, you're now going with outbound. You need to not compare them across the same set of metrics, because you're going to be in for, someone will end up being like, this isn't working. No, it very well might be. It's not going to work in the same set of metrics with the same goals.
I will not work with anyone starting lead generation if they've never done it before, or if they misunderstand it, unless they get on the same vocabulary and understanding that these are leads. And I basically walk through total time and funnel, quiet phase, research phase, sales phase, right? That these are QR phase, quiet phase, and research phase, and we're trying to get them to sales phase. So your metrics don't even kick in until they actually get to the point where they raise their hands. You're establishing what your total time and funnel will be, because you don't even know it now.
So let's take this back to this idea of looking backward to look forward. So what we're saying here, what Renee is talking about here specifically as her example, is this idea of how do we do the top, very, very top of the funnel, or the early part of the funnel. If all we've been doing is reactive selling, waiting for somebody to raise their hand and say they want to buy, and we're saying, but we want to grow, it's really hard to grow around reactive selling, around the hand raising selling. We need to now go out and look for opportunities. We need to go out and activate people who haven't raised their hands yet. So as we're looking at what we're doing now, if we want to grow, just saying we're going to grow 10% doesn't help. We have to figure out how we're going to do it. This is one way to look at where are we reaching people in the sales process? How do we reach them earlier? And how will our metrics change as we do that? I think it's an important, larger story that needs to be told. So when I sit down with my clients and we start planning, we do what I call a sales strategy. Here's the process that I go through. And I think maybe this will be helpful for people who are starting to think about this right now. So the first thing I do is say, what did you do last year? Who were your 5 biggest clients? How much did you sell to them? What did you sell to them? And then from there, you get the going forward. What could you be selling to them? So really looking at that top 20% of your revenue, where did it come from and can it grow? And the next thing is to look at who are all of the clients that you're selling to? Are any of the people that you sold to last year, could you be selling a lot more than you're selling now? Looking for the growth opportunities in your existing accounts. So before I ever go out looking at how are we going to do more, I start there. And then once we've looked at that and said, okay, here's where revenue can come from, then I start looking at where did you sell last year? Did you sell to schools? Did you sell to school districts? Did you sell to hospitals? Did you sell to hospital systems? Did you sell to government? Like, where did you sell and where was it easiest? It's really breaking down the individual areas of what worked and what didn't, which industries, which ones were most effective, which buyers were the best ones to start with. Really digging into the what happened last year. And so I think we start going forward before we've really dug deeply into what did we do right, and what did we do wrong, which is what Chris was talking about a little bit earlier. What should we be doing differently? You don't know what you should be doing differently until you look at what you did last year. Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
I think one of the things when you were talking, when you're looking at it, when you say, hey, what was our best customers this year? I think you really should break that down into the existing customers versus new customers, because are you selling something different to your new customer base than you were to your old customers, and you're just growing it from that established relationship, where this new thing may be, hey, is there opportunity here even to take it into some of those more well-established accounts, because obviously it has some momentum, but being able to really understand those two different dynamics, because what they're buying can be very different. Because a lot of times in your existing account base, you can get pigeonholed into you do X, Y, and Z. And it's very difficult to move those customers off that. Even if it's a huge revenue opportunity, they sometimes aren't going to think of you in a different way. Where new customers may have an expectation, may not, but at least you get to form more of that.
So that becomes part of your strategy.
Yeah.
Two sides of it. How do we change our positioning with our new clients? Or how do we set positioning with new clients? How do we change positioning with old clients? Again, looking back to look forward. Mike, what else do you have for us on this? Nothing.
I think one of the things to be careful about is if you spend too much time, let's say you're driving and you spend too much time looking in the rearview mirror, you might run into something. Now, so if we're driving and we're focused, let's say we're focused our attention forward, what do we need to do to be able to look in that rearview mirror? Where do we have to stop? So how do we create space and time for people to go through this kind of process of reflection and planning to help the business move forward? And if you're trying to make it happen as just this byproduct of, hey, it's something else that we're going to add to our daily workflow or our daily thing, you might be creating a situation where you're going to hurt your team. The other piece on reflection is you can't reflect on what you're going to do.
No.
So you got to go through, you got to make sure you've done it or have data to support doing it and take that action and then reflect on it. So take this same thing that we're talking about relative to the timing on strategic planning and executing and shrinking it down, not only from an annual basis, but in a quarterly basis, and then maybe even a 2-week sprint basis, and start to identify where your feedback loops are through the process so that you make reflection part of your culture inside your business, how you do what you do inside your business. Those are a couple of the things I'd add.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you use a driving metaphor, you're like, that last road that we went on was way too bumpy. Let's get on the freeway, right? What don't we want to do? That last road was so windy, it made me sick to my stomach. I don't want to do that again. Let's go straight. Too many traffic lights. Great. Let's try a different path. So you don't want to stay stuck in the past, but you want to figure out what worked and what didn't. Last time we took the freeway, we were there in 5 minutes. Let's do that. Last time we took the freeway, we sat there for 5 hours. Let's not go at 8 a.m. That's the kind of looking back to look forward.
without doing what you said, Mike, because you cannot sit in yesterday. You can't do what you did last year just because you did it last year. And you can't keep looking back and wondering, why am I never going forward when I'm only looking in the rearview mirror? So I love that perspective.
I'm going to add one more to it. If, as a leadership team, you say, hey, we're all going to drive to New York, and everybody's driving to New York and everything's good, and then you're going to say, actually, we're going to drive to Oregon. And now it's like, ooh, shit, we got to turn around. And then, oh, you know what? I think we should be in Florida. And heck, wouldn't it be cool if we could go spend some time in Hawaii? Well, if you're not going to drive to Hawaii. So let's be realistic about how we're working through these changes that happen inside our business and the time required in order to help those changes go through. And maybe another way to think differently about it is, what if you have an exploratory team that focuses on doing some of the new things while you have a team that focuses on keeping the business running? Because there are some people who really like to keep the business running, and there are other people who like to explore because they just don't like managing existing things. So just a couple of different ways to kind of look at this challenge, which is a very complex challenge. It does not have to be as complicated as you make it, though.
No, it doesn't have to.
I'd like to dovetail on the point that both of you just made too. Strategy in and of itself, I think a lot of people believe they can do this in a 1 day offsite or half day offsite or something like that too. And it's incredibly hard to run a business and get really strategic and think about where, especially if you have to do acquisitions or major pivots, and a lot of companies are facing what worked for so long is not working. And this is really hard, and it is not a one and done. I mean, you can get a lot done and you can have a better year, right, this year because you did that 1 day planning and it got deep and so forth. But one of the things I really, when I work with people and we go in and I'm like, okay, so you're assigning these tasks to marketing downstream versus using marketing to make your strategy. So who is your target persona? What are your core values? What is the messaging, your positioning? Right? A lot of this isn't done. This work it's inevitable that steps have been skipped, right? Because people are busy running a business. And in some cases, there's a moment where there's a gift market and they are making money hand over fist. They're not stopping to do this then, right? So one of the things I really recommend is to take bites at a time, right? Really, you may be working on your core values and your purpose, or you may be working on your target persona, really getting deep and having a very deep understanding of your target persona, and then messaging back to everyone in the company what they need to know about that and how it impacts their world, right? Those things are kind of a step at a time, and they are just as important and all these other things that we said you do, and how you apply your strategy, how you assign out the KPIs and create the tactics that you're going to do. Every one of these things makes one of those things easier. So just that it's not all one and done. It's incremental. You get there. You have to make assumptions from time to time and change. I think Chris said this earlier, change the assumptions because the market has changed, right? Or your competitors have changed, or your top client, maybe your whole 20% of top of revenue came through one channel or one client, and that went away overnight. These things happen. So you do have to change them. I just wanted to point out strategy is incremental, just like execution gets incremental.
Yeah, I think though, one of the things that you said is really important. Many of the clients that I'm talking to right now, the reason they're talking to me is because what they've always done doesn't work anymore. And what's alarming to me is how long this has gone on before they stopped and said, it's not gonna work anymore. Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? How long do you continue down the path that you're going without really recognizing it's getting worse, not better? One of the companies that I'm talking to right now, I don't even know how to explain it, but their marketplace has shifted because the technology that they've sold into has changed. So the companies that do the technology that they have been supporting are now doing something so different that their technology isn't as relevant. So they either need to change their technology or figure out if somebody else can use their technology. But they've been traveling along this path, sort of shrinking and accepting it instead of going 3 years ago, this is coming. What are we going to do? And as we look at things like AI and we say, this is what we've been doing, this is how it's been working. How is AI going to change the world around us, what we sell, who we sell to, and so forth? And for some companies, it may not make a difference, but for others, it's going to be huge.
Well,
it's
the
going to
most
be a very
dangerous.
small percent that it doesn't matter to.
Right.
Well, in terms of what their product is, in any case, but yeah.
Well, I always look at the most dangerous phrase in business is we've always done it that way. Right.
Right. And so when we talk about looking back, we're not looking back at we've always done it that way. Let's keep doing it this way. We're looking back for things that help us see this is starting not to work. This market is slowing down.
What assumptions did we have that were just proven invalid, right? Like we made certain assumptions. Was there a point in the year where we would have had enough clarity to adjust, right? Because I think sometimes it's also your strategy is not written and carved into stone, right? Like if something isn't working, absolutely isn't working, and you can pinpoint the fact is that, hey, it's not a matter of momentum. It's not a matter of we haven't invested enough here. It's a matter of this is the wrong approach. Then you have to make an adjustment. And that's not easy to do because you've probably invested a lot, but that's all sunk cost. So.
Liz, I'd just add to your, because I do think this is happening a lot where people are saying things that have always worked are just not working, or we just didn't have to do this much to get business before, some flavor of that. Right. And I think I've been in these situations in a major company, in a major corporation. I worked in media, as when these things exploded, the media world changed drastically. And if I can share, one of the most important things to think about is you have to, while you still have momentum with what you've been doing, start figuring out whatever's new, because it's more expensive than what you're used to make that change. You probably need to hire some people that have that expertise. You probably need to bring in some technology. You have to have the revenue from what you have been doing before it goes too far down to finance what you need to be doing. And that is, I don't envy that decision. I don't at all. I try to help everywhere I can with it, but it is critical to success. And I think that a lot of people miss that window, and that's where the panic sets in.
There's a couple of challenges that happen. Some people don't like thinking this way. Some people can't think this way. And some people don't even know that there's the ability to think this way. And there's a couple of different categories that folks fall in. And unfortunately, what we do is we bring all of those people together to do some of this planning, and they're really not the right fit for the discussions. So take some time, pause, and ask, hey, can I actually define the process that gets me from point A to point B and create a predictable result? If I don't know that the process exists and it just is happening organically, then maybe get somebody else inside the group that has a view on process, documentation, or design to get involved in the conversation and kind of lay things out, work through things on a whiteboard as a team and put information down on paper. Could be digital or it could be on one of these old things, but make sure you've got the right people in the room. Make sure you're asking the right questions. Make sure you're clear about what the assumptions are that you're making. And if you do that kind of stuff, you'll make more progress. There's an awesome book to read. It's an old book, The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen. Will help you think a bit differently about system integrated systems and system design and process and system thinking. It's a relatively simple read. If you've not read it, pick it up. It's a good way to start. If this topic or this thing is super interesting to you, or you can work with any of the people that are on this call, because many of us are systems thinkers, as you probably can tell.
Okay. Any last thoughts on looking back to look forward before we move to our next episode?
I have one.
Yeah.
Make it fun.
Make it fun.
Make it fun. Like,
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this segment or this episode of the Sales SOS podcast.
And that's a wrap of this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. A huge thank you to our experts for throwing us a lifeline with their insights. We hope today's episode has equipped you to navigate the sales seas with confidence. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to the Sales SOS podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to explore, join us live on LinkedIn every second Friday, or share your questions on YouTube or LinkedIn. Until next time, keep sailing towards those sales goals. I'm Liz Hyman, your captain here at the Sales SOS podcast, saying smooth sailing and successful selling.